Is this live? SG asks. Yes, it's live. This is Sensphere Saloon Live. As a lot of people have asked me for, I've been trying to find time. The puppets are back for they're always having their whiskey when it's a saloon. So, yes, definitely. And I've got my menu and everything. So, don't you worry. Now, it's a special saloon on the Vanity Fair shooty interview, and I've got a sidekick panelist with me. I'm just going to say hello, Divine and Dragon.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're all good to go. On our
Eh,
special, it's for Britain. It's a very late day, but I should say as to you, an American, and any other Americans watching, Happy Thanksgiving.
That's right. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so we'll have the happy vibes for a moment, but you know me,
Mm,
I'll be shooting right into it.
that's right.
um, So this is the agenda tonight. Obviously, the shooty interview on the Vanity Fair magazine. Obviously, other streams have done it, but you know the Sense for Your Saloon will do a decoding analysis, my English teacher expertise, and yours, of course. We'll have a good look at this. So I've got 5 categories here for those who are watching us, and we'll take you through all the evidence. We're going to look at Ncuti's pretensions about acting. I have to say, the way he talks about it, when you look at what he says, you're going, you're making it sound as though it's a completely different thing. The bigotry and sweeping generalizations that I made, which I found quite shocking, considering that he's talking about bigotry, how little he understands science fiction and science fiction fandom. His preoccupations with the superficialities of acting, I'm like Madonna and yeah, there's a lot to go into there. And then, of course, Shooty's absolute lack of self-irony, self-awareness. What were your first thoughts, Divine and Dragon, when you first read this article?
It felt very much like a puff piece to me. Um, when I read the article, I didn't get a sense of any what I call penetrating questions that would test his mettle. These felt like softballs that were being lobbed in his direction. You're talking about questions that should really do a couple of things. The first is drive his appreciation for being in this line of work, because it is a blessing to do this kind of job and earn the money he's earning when so many people would strive for that and never achieve it. But the other is a sense of understanding that this is early in his career still, and yet he's trying to come across as though he's got a grand vision of what it is to be an actor.
There's some real interesting stuff, and I'm going to get straight to it because saloons are famous for getting right into it. And you can see I've got my plates ready.
Oh
I'm gonna
yes.
I'm gonna spin all the plates, and I've got everything highlighted, as you can guess. So we're going to get straight into it, and of course I'll come to the thread at various points, and me and Divine and Dragon will try our best. But we really have used our English teaching sensibilities and gone line by line, comma by comma. And because part of our job is reading essays all the time, we've read between the lines. There's things you can discern. So, what I wanted to start with, Divine and Dragon, was Shooty in this article. And of course, it was to celebrate Hollywood 2024, and he's in the top 100 or something. I don't know how that happens. But anyway, it was the sense he says on the surface he's got imposter syndrome. And I found this fascinating because I don't know if I quite believe it when I add all the pieces together. So, first of all, Divine and Dragon, I'll just show you and everybody else these elements from the article. So, I don't do it chronologically, everybody. I do it according to topic. So, basically, in one part, he talks about, my God, I can't believe I was in that film Barbie. I look at myself in it and go, is that me? Do you know what? That's the first. Actors don't normally talk like that, do they? Actors want to be in different roles. Actors would dream of being in Hollywood. So I don't understand an actor saying, I can't believe I'm in that. Now, if they were saying they're in Shakespeare's Henry V and they were with Laurence Olivier and they can't believe the cast, that's one thing. But Barbie, I mean, did you find this was a bit strange, Divine and Dragon?
Well, it feels like it's bigger than it actually is. Number one, he wasn't in a lead role, so there is that. But you could say, in his defense, oh, it's a big film. It turned out to be a big film that year. But what I would almost expect is I was so lucky to be in that film in any capacity, as successful as it became. Um, Almost the way he phrases it feels just a little bit pretentious. Maybe that's my reading of it, but
And what we'll do, because obviously I'll come to the thread in a minute, so that I'm reading into that one line, but of course I join the dots as me and Divine and Dragon do, and so of course you get this imposter syndrome that resonates throughout his work, the disbelief, etc., etc. The other thing, while I'm on it, by the way, is I could not believe he said this. 6 years ago, Ncuti Gatwa was a starving actor on the verge of quitting the business, and so therefore he cannot believe he's now been in Barbie, Doctor Who, and Sex Education. Starving in Britain. I mean, hyperbole is one thing, but please pipe it down. We know what a jobbing actor does, and half the time they have to work in McDonald's or somewhere else to keep the money going. But again, were you detecting authenticity, or were you detecting hyperbole?
hyperbole, clearly hyperbole. Based on where he's living, obviously the concept of being a starving actor is stretching it a bit. Most struggling actors will find some kind of gig employment to feed themselves. It's not as though they're going to gag and die if they don't have a particular job. A better way of phrasing it would be he was struggling to get his big break, and he was getting by doing things maybe he didn't want to have to do, delivering pizzas, whatever it may be. But he makes it bigger. It's hyperbole. He's exaggerating.
Lee Smith buying into the imposters. By the way, I'm not even finished on imposter syndrome yet, and Divan and Dragon knows that because he even refers to it. It was amazing to see you go from that role to Barbie, says the questioner. Was that the first time that you experienced the full Hollywood experience? Absolutely. Oh my gosh, it was a real test of my imposter syndrome. Now, I will allow, because as English teachers and as good readers, we know the score here. He's saying he can't believe he's in Hollywood, isn't he? That's what he's saying here. But when I add all the pieces together, Dragon, I do find there's a kind of faux modesty, faux humility as well. But I get this bit. I can't believe I'm in Hollywood.
Well, I get that. I get that. But that's where I come back and say you can open your response with, when I got there, it felt unreal. I settled in, and now I'm so pleased that it happened. I'm very lucky. So many people strive to achieve this, and by whatever circumstance, I'm the one with the winning ticket. I'm here, and I feel very privileged. You want some kind of legitimate understanding of how hard it is to break into this profession, and I don't get that sense from him.
And he continues. So just to prove everything, I'm starting on imposter syndrome, then I'm going to go on about his pretensions about acting because it just jars with me, this. Anyway, so he says here, and I'll show it big screen just so everybody can actually assess it themselves. So was there a moment when it really hit home? Okay, so he's been led to it to a degree. But he says, that doing the Vanity Fair shoot was one of those days. This is when you start to detect, is he just saying things to please people? Is he really seriously saying that? Is he really feeling like imposter syndrome because it's such a famous magazine? It's Hollywood, big magazine. Is it that kind of thing he's going for? But I have to say, once I add all the other pieces in the article, I just started to think you're overdoing this, Ncuti. Pull back. Yes, this is all new to you, but I don't know. It just jars. Or in another way, I'll say it, it makes him look so inexperienced, so unaware of how to deal with this.
Yeah, no, I would agree to that. He's still very young in his profession. He's been doing it for a few years. He's trying to promote himself. And that's why I come back to the article itself. This interview feels like it's a softball bunch of questions being lobbed at him so he can promote himself. But at the same time, there's not what I call sincerity there. It feels like it's all presentational as opposed to heartfelt. Maybe that's me.
Well, the thing is, the soft, easy interviews, as you know from a certain election you've just had in your country, are the danger ones. They are dangerous ones. You've got to prepare for them pretty well. And I feel as though he's just shooting off here and he's not thinking it through. And actually, I'm studying every answer going, you're telling me so much more about you, mate. So let's get to it now then. So he thinks he's got an imposter syndrome. He can't believe his good luck. And let's have a look. I'm now moving into Ncuti sounding pretentious about acting. I'm not an actor. We've had a lot of actors playing the Doctor, but I've not heard actors sounding like this, as if it's either very hard or... And I'll show you what I mean. As per usual, on the Saloon, I'll show you what I mean. So here's my first example. So this is his pretensions about acting. He talks about, and I'm saving the Madonna bit, don't you worry. It's the Amber bit. He talks about the tools in my kit as an actor that I've learned through the University of Life and drama school. As you just said a moment ago, Dragon, how old is he? University of Life. Okay, an actor's an actor. You either know your craft or you don't, I think. You know innately how to play certain characters, but University of Life, don't get pretentious about this, mate.
No, he's kind of pretending to be an actor.
As Raymond Williams has neatly agreed with you on that one. Raymond Williams also saying he's had everything given to him because of what we would say is in the DEI protocols, and does photo shoots wearing women's clothes, and he ticks all the boxes at the right time. Do you know what? I put that picture up. By the way, this photograph is not from the Vanity Fair. This is from Rolling Stone. So I'm declaring my cheating on the photograph. I wanted to show that photograph because everybody watching, it's the Jaguar advert all over again, isn't it? Look at the color. Look at the design. It's Jaguar. So it does hit that DEI kind of thing. Anyway, the University of Life. So our great actor is referring to the University of Life that's really helping him out as an actor play all these parts. So then you think, well, what parts are you talking about? And this is when it gets very interesting, I find, because he talks about playing a 16-year-old, in Sex Education, a mortal alien, I assume that's the Doctor, a doll in Barbie, and a hedonistic 18th century aristocrat. These are not normal characters, in the University of Life, starving and, having to, make ends meet and struggling with unemployment and, real life issues, I assume is what he's trying to potentially talk about. What they're helping him play a 16-year-old who lives at home, an alien, well, do they have bills? A doll, I don't think, and an aristocrat. I mean, honestly, Dragon, he's trying to sound so pretentious about his craft, and yet he hasn't played really, let's be honest, a well-rounded, normal character yet.
No, he hasn't. And I think, as the stream have pointed out, he's playing himself. He's playing variations of himself. I want you to picture the Wayback Machine and say this was 1980, 1990. Would he have been cast to play a version of Ncuti Gatwa in films back then? And you become aware, when you're aware of the era we're going through right now, he was lucky to come of age at this time because he was cast because of his identity, not because of his acting skills. And virtually every role he's played has been a variation of Ncuti Gatwa. And the irony is he wants to reinvent himself what other versions of Ncuti Gatwa can he play other than Ncuti Gatwa?
And that feeds into what we're saying here. If you look at that top bit, everybody, he talks about, my personality and what made them think of me for the role. But they're picking you for a teenager who's gay, and you are gay. They're picking you to play an alien. You could argue an oddball. They're playing you to play a doll, a piece of plastic. They're picking you to play an aristocrat, and nobody seems to care anymore about aristocrats or anybody from the past. Look what they did to Isaac Newton. So basically, you can do what the hell you want. And this is the problem. He seems to be going, oh my God, and they're picking me for various sins, but they haven't really given him yet or cast him in a realistic, well-rounded, modern character role where his university of life will help him. So considering this is his portfolio, this is his kind of CV so far, it's a very unusual one. It's an unusual collection to play a doll, an alien, a gay teenager out openly, because it is still unusual, isn't it, in TV and everything. So a lot of it is either himself or he can do what the hell he wants. The rules don't count. So you think, I don't know how the University of Life or anything is helping you in that way. And then you remember he said he was starving. You remember the bit about, I'm so lucky, for humility, for modesty. Well, I've read the same article. Unfortunately, you can't sustain that story, because if you were starving, and you do feel very lucky that you got a job in TV and Hollywood, you wouldn't say this. And so I'll show you the next bit. It's the bottom paragraph. He says, after one season of sex education, I spoke with my team, doesn't even say agent, team. And I was like, the next thing that we do in the public eye needs to be completely different. So we waited a long time before accepting anything. So he was so busy starving, and he was so feeling so lucky in that role, because lots of actors don't have a job. He actually, with his team, I assume you pay that team, sat not taking up jobs till the right one came along. Now, you could say, well done you, because, yeah, you don't want to be typecast. But typecasting normally comes later. And if as an actor, Dragon, you think typecasting is your risk, I think you're doing all right.
Oh, I would agree to that. A lot of actors, especially if they are character actors, understand that they're going to play to type, and they're lucky that there's a type that there's always going to be a demand for. So they stay busy. They've got roles coming, yeah, several times a year, and people are familiar with them. On the other hand, Gatwa has a very short resume at this point. It's a little bit early to assume he should be afraid of being typecast, but my lord, if he was typecast, uh, he should be grateful that it actually happened to a degree, because that means there may be steady work coming as a result of that, playing a particular kind of character. Well, oh gosh, what's happening now? He's playing a version of Ncuti Gatwa in virtually everything he does. And if the culture changes and there's no longer a demand for that kind of personality on celluloid, then he's going to have a problem.
And if he is playing himself, that's where the typecasting will come in. Do some acting. But I do find it fascinating what he says here, and I'll join with what Joe Chapman is saying. Good to see you, Joe Chapman. I hope you've subscribed. I haven't seen you before. It's great. Welcome, welcome, welcome. But basically, when he says he was starving, and it doesn't correlate, does it? That you suddenly say that you are turning down work and you're paying a team. Let's be honest. Now, just to join this up, Joe Chapman here says, Mr. Gatwa, raised in a very posh part of Edinburgh. I know because it cost me a fortune to rent there. He was given a privileged upbringing beyond I had in Scotland. Believe me, my son went to his primary school. It's very well to do, supported more than suburban ones. He's not known suffering. I mean, okay, people will call out if you're exaggerating. Just tell us the truth. If you want to be authentic, but don't make up a past. I don't know his past like you do, possibly Joe Chapman, but what I do know is the English is not linking. There's an inconsistency there. So I will continue to move on, because that's what our saloons do. We are concise, we're sharp, and we'll give you the facts based on what he has said. It's from the horse's mouth. So basically, I'm still focusing on his pretensions as an actor, considering he hasn't been in it that long. So regarding this one, I just wanted to show you here. He's asked about backsliding in the industry, about, whether any advances for black rights, queer rights, or whatever will backslide. Unfortunately, he says, we still see many things as trends and as fashions. And what we're trying to say is that we're human and we're here to stay, and our stories and our voices deserve to be heard. And this is the thing that really gets me going is, look, if you're lucky in acting, good for you. Go for it, mate. But don't pretend it's because of anything special, because we all know the truth is, let's be honest, and I could have Rachel on, who's on our chat about it, the Queen of the Walk. If I had her on, she'd say it's all about luck. Some people who've had a stellar career in acting, it's just luck. It's got nothing necessarily to do with you've got special talent, or as you've said, Dragon, there may be one or two other things that help nudge in that direction. But this just sounds too pretentious to me. We're all human and we're here to stay, and our stories and our voices deserve to be heard. You're an actor. You're an actor who's supposed to be doing somebody else's words. You're not.
Absolutely.
You're not doing a crusade.
Well, but he thinks he is, and that's where a lot of the pretentiousness comes in. He did make a point, about fashions. There are certain trends or fashions that are in vogue right now. Identity politics is very in vogue, but my feeling is it will eventually go out of vogue. What happens to his career and his sense of activism when that happens?
Well, yeah, and I'm just looking here. Mad McCann, also in the Northeast. I spoke with my team is such an actor-lovey thing to say, as if he had a massive team of advisors. Well, Mad McCann, Mackham, sorry, he either does, in which case, money, 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 or yes, it's a pretentious phrase. Either or, the starving story, sub story, as Joe Chapman says, it doesn't hold water. And in Britain, seriously, starving? We don't have benefits in this country? I thought we did. So yeah, there's a few little kind of strange elements to this as we go through. Now, if you take a look at this element from his excuse me, from his pretensions about acting, I think of myself as a shapeshifter, and I will shift into whatever shape you want. I thought it was called acting. Normally, when you get actors, very experienced actors, they just say, well, I put a slant on it. They might say they had to think about it. And in rehearsals, we wanted to bring this element out. They just talk about it like they know what they're doing. The director has an input. The writer might be there and have some input. But that's basically what they do. It comes through in rehearsals. They have a good chat about it. Sometimes you do research. You do a bit of research into the background of that character. But I think of myself as a shapeshifter. Oh, I tell you what, big yourself up. I'm a chameleon. 1 minute I'm a doll. Well, I mean, how much acting potential do you need for that? The next minute I'm an aristocrat. Well, yeah, an aristocrat who doesn't normally really, to be honest, have the same presentation as you, but that's how life is. But I found this bit, Dragon, very pretentious.
Well, it was pretentious. And when I think about a true chameleon into a role, and I'm thinking Doctor Who, I'm going back to Patrick Troughton, who definitely
Yeah.
had the capacity to play so many different types of personalities. I'm remembering Enemy of the World, where Patrick Troughton was playing Salamander as well as the Doctor, and he did a brilliant job playing both personalities exquisitely. And I don't see that type of variation. If Gatwa is a shapeshifter, I want him to shape into something other than Gatwa. I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. And it's just an expression, isn't it? I've never heard an actor talk like this. So to me, it just smells of pretension. Instead of just saying, well, I can play, I can play a lot of baddies, or, some of them are quite modest about it. Yeah, for some reason, it's my face. I'm always good at being a baddie or something like that. But I see myself as a shapeshifter, and I will shift into whatever shape you want. Oh, wow. Such talent. Such talent. Would you like to shapeshift into a Time Lord, please, who actually can make decisions? But of course, I have to be honest with you, that is partly to do with the script. Now, let's have a look at, there's some interesting comments in the thread here. Joe Chapman, who's obviously from the same part of Edinburgh, wants to point out to us, I'm always happy. And the school was to see people rise, see immigrants thrive amongst us. Better than born here, even. Great for them. And yeah, that's fine. I mean, none of us are knocking that. That's the way life is. That's how it should be in many cases, that everyone helps each other. But to then claim victimhood, no, that's taking it too far. David Mullen, good to see you again. He's a model, an actor, a fashionista, and no doubt has sponsors. So I imagine he does have a team of sorts, yes. Really, though, he's a personality more than an actual actor. Now, David, when I was talking to Dragon about this before, there is this element that when you see his past, and he did it on the Graham Norton show, he discussed, he really was a dancer in a gay nightclub, wasn't he? And it was his body that was his wares. And then he's done his craft and he's moved into acting, but it was the body first. And of course, he wants to be almost an objectified beast when you see him in all these kind of photographs now. So unfortunately, you almost think, right, uglify yourself. Some actors are quite good looking, but what they do is they try and make themselves look rough, unready. They, bags under their eyes for a role. They want to show that they aren't vain. But I'm not getting to that point yet with with Ncuti. What do you reckon, Dragon?
I think I think he would be mortified if he had to appear on screen in any role where he wasn't objectified. Objectification is really part of his stage persona at this point. I mean, again, could you picture any of the previous incarnations in the role of the Doctor wanting to twerk on camera? And I don't see it.
But this is it. I mean, when you say you're a shapeshifter, now you could say it's a clever analogy or it's a clever metaphor, and all the rest of it. But I find it fascinating that he's talking about the aesthetic, really. And that's what he obsesses about quite a lot. And it starts to give itself away. And so, I've got that. Lee Smith, Gatwa ain't shifting many season 1 box sets. And that's on the whole team, of course, Lee Smith. I've got to be fair. RTD has written those scripts, those stories, or those lightweight stories, and that has been part of the problem. He has served badly, Ncuti Gatwa. Madam Mackham, this is classic actors having a taste of the Hollywood. Yeah, and then they start getting pretentious. They start telling us how to do net zero or something else, don't they? They start to kind of preach, save the whale, everything, which is such an echo chamber. And I think actors forget how their words will travel. And back here, we will shake our head and roll our eyes. Or in the guise of the Sensory Saloon, we will just study your language and start to say when it doesn't make sense. Good to see you, Peter Venkman. He reminds me of someone who has no real personality either. That guy would say he liked the same things you did and drop them when it's inconvenient. I have no problem in a funny sort of way of an actor hiding behind the roles. They say some actors are very shy. So I get that. And he might be an empty vessel. It's just that if he was an empty vessel, Peter, he wouldn't be doing all these interviews about politics and racism and homophobia and all these other things. And he's been pretty heavy on all this. So Dragon, so far you with me on what I'm assessing from the script?
Oh, absolutely. We are on the same page, and I think you pointed out the agenda-driven components where he makes himself a victim. I think because of the era we're living through, he realizes that if he can play into that, he can, quote, raise his stature. And so what he's trying to do is find a mechanism to raise his stature that goes outside the realm of actually performing, of actually being a good professional actor. And I don't find that a very attractive quality in any
And what,
performance.
and what I will say to Paul Richards about Gatwa'S Shakespeare, when it was the King's coronation, for example, Shakespeare's very hard to do for so many people, and there's certain actors who just know the rhythms of it. Judi Dench does. Miriam Margolyes is brilliant at Charles Dickens scripts, but yeah, I see your point, because it is hard to do, to get the rhyme, the rhythm, sell the prose, and actually sell the words as if you actually know what's being said. And I wasn't too convinced. You can see I'm talking to Dragon. There he is. The Dragon. Yes. Gosh. Do you know, I've got puppets behind me and I'm talking to a puppet. It's shocking how the world is. I could be certified easily.
There you go. There you go.
So
Well, I was almost certified. I tried, just like Joe. I tried to make my break in Los Angeles, and it was very, very hard.
it is. And Rachel says the same thing, doesn't she? And I will chat about it. Now, the next big topic from the Vanity Fair article, everybody, November 2024, what I say it as bigotry and sweeping generalizations, which is so ironic from somebody who's telling me about the bigotry in the country and the bigotry in the world, etc., etc. I find it so ironic when you get this, but I found the same with RTD. Sometimes you can see his kind of politics in the scripts, but sometimes, as I say, in the scripts, there's inconsistencies and non-progressive things. So just before I move on to prove my point on this area, David Mullen, you can equate him to John Pertwee in many ways. I think the difference, though, is Pertwee was trained in radio, film, and television. He wasn't a model. He was an entertainer branching into acting. And David Mullen, I was talking about this earlier with my panel that I've recorded a Carnival of Monsters review, and we were discussing Moon Boots and Dinner Suits, that great autobiography about Pertwee. The Pertwees go all the way back. They're in showbiz. They are performers. And so, you know, it's in his blood. And when Dragon mentioned that Ncuti's still young, Matt Smith was a very young actor, but he just studied his craft. And he kind of was quite quiet about it, wasn't he? I didn't see him being pretentious and making big statements about acting. And of course, Hollywood didn't hit him straight away. I think this is probably mucked up the kind of compass of Ncuti a little bit. But bigotry and sweeping generalizations is my theme. And so I'm going to start proving my point. Here we go. Hopefully I prove my point. So as you can see, he could easily be doing that Jaguar non-car advert by that photograph on the left, but it's on the right that I wanted to show you. So if you take a look, we've already talked about the University of Life, but now we're starting to talk about the other element, which is the sweeping generalizations. Now, at the bottom there, he says, human beings are amazing and terrible and very weird. We are so weird. I want to play every single type of human being. Right, okay. On the last statement, you go for it, mate. Get as many jobs as you want. But what I do find problematic is when he talks about human beings are so amazing and terrible and very weird. Well, hello, there's a planet of people. We should all be different. So that what he's saying there are just 3 adjectives when he could come up with thousands. But when he says we are so weird, Dragon, we're falling into something here that I've noticed a lot with our lovies in the media. And they're starting to talk about how humans are very strange and weird. And RTD uses this language all the time. And I'm thinking, no, we're just humans.
Well, humans are designed to be very individual and very individualistic. I think using the phrase "weird" is him trying to fall back into, I don't know. If you look at American politics, co-opting the word "joy" for one of the campaigns. So weird happens to be another interesting word to try and throw out there, but it feels empty to me. uh, he basically is wanting to say, okay, people are different. There are different types of people to play. I want to have my shot at playing different people, different roles. But his phraseology is a little over the top.
as usual. And this is what I mean. And actually, well done, Paul Richards, for just reminding me. When I do these saloons, I try and be snappy. I've got to keep remembering I don't miss this stuff out. Well, number one, we said Ncuti Gatwa. Well, he's young and he's learning, but he's older than Matt Smith was when he got the role. And Matt Smith is a natural eccentric and unusual looking. He has an old man's brain and a young body. Gatwa has none of that. And I think it's important, actually, that point, Paul Richards, because a lot of the Doctor Who actors were either strong character actors, they brought things to the role which wasn't their physique. There was something about, their eyes, their stare, their voice, the way they could depict many different things, like you said, Troughton earlier, Dragon. But I don't know what Ncuti is supposed to be bringing to the party, apart from what RTD says is his charisma and energy. But you'd hope for that from any youngster anyway.
Well, he does exude youth. I'll say that. He can exude enthusiasm of a sort. I can say that, but he does not exude gravitas. So when we talk about an old man's mind and a young man's body, eccentricity, character, Matt Smith had gravitas, and that is totally absent from Gatwa's persona. Totally absent. Now, as you've pointed out, maybe that's partly due to the writing. But no one is saying that, for example, Peter Capaldi received brilliant scripts that he was able to take over the top with his performances. 2/3 of his stories were terrible. And it was his own persona that raised the bar and allowed the viewers to enjoy those shows. I don't think Gatwa would have that capacity.
I think there's problems. There's problems in this interview in lots of different ways. I'll just pick up what Mackham's saying. He says he wants to play every type of human. How about playing a bloody alien, as that's what the Doctor is? Boils my blood sometimes. The thing is, in this interview, he's talking about sex education, importance of being earnest, Doctor Who, and Barbie, if that's a real character. Not. But when he says, I want to play every single type of human, a lot of them that I'm aware of have been a gay character. Now, he's played a gay 16-year-old and he's playing a gay Time Lord alien. And so to me, as we've been saying, he seems to be playing a similar type of role. And yet he seems to be saying ambitiously, I want to play every type of character. If I was one of his agents now, I'd be saying, you need to play evil next. You need to play something that doesn't rely on physique, that doesn't rely on energy. You need to play something that actually goes against that type completely, because you're starting to fall into, it's all about apparently your charisma, your magnetism, your look. And I think he has to kind of tone that down. If he doesn't, he says he doesn't want to be typecast. I think he's on the way to being typecast at the moment. I just look at Matt Smith's performance, and it was amazing how he was playing somebody who has a young body in physique, looking like, I'm not pretending he's thousands of years old, but he had a much older brain. And the way he crafted some of his mannerisms, the energy he must have put into containing himself, then going large, being gawky, fascinating what he did. Real craft. And I'm not seeing that yet here. But it sounds as though when I've done saloons before, RTD wants him to play it his way. And so therefore, why would it change? Now, just looking at a few of the other comments here as we go through. Raymond Williams, Madonna is a diva, but she's also hugely talented. I've yet to see Gatwa'S talent, except for his male modelling. That's down to his looks, but I have yet to see him act other than himself. I'm waiting, and I know Rachel, who comes on our channel a lot, she's not wanting to give the judgment yet. As an actress, she's waiting to see once she's had a whole load of material. But sex education, I'm finding that the Doctor now is a version of Eric, hyped up, crazy costumes, that sort of thing. And Eric was a comedic character in the end in Sex Education, and I don't want the Doctor to go down this comedic nonsense road.
Well, that's exactly the road he's going down, and that's what we've seen. I appreciate Rachel wanting to wait before casting judgment, but again, if you look at other actors playing the role, within the first scene, within the first episode, certainly within the first story, they had established and made the role their own and showed what they had the capacity to do. And for a moment, one of the things that came to my mind was the actor Jonathan Pryce. The first time I saw him, he was playing Mr. Dark in Something Wicked This Way Comes. Very dark, very threatening kind of character, brilliantly done, back when Disney could actually do films. And 2 years later, I saw him doing Brazil, playing the geeky, nerdy character Sam Lowry. And I thought, oh my God, that's a 180-degree turn. And he played both of those with power, with pathos. Talk about variety in just one film after the other. Do you see that yet in Gatwa's performances?
And of course, I will hold RTD to account because he's the one who should be demanding. Even Jane T would run downstairs from the director's gallery sometimes, insisting that something had to be tweaked. But this is what we need now. Otherwise, Ncuti will continue to be what Ncuti thinks is correct for the role. So going back to one or two of the points he made, and I've covered every page I will do in the whole program, but there's one or two where you look as though you'll think, oh, Brendan's repeating the same page. It's to get different facets out of it. So still on my theme about bigotry and sweeping generalizations being made. When he talks about we're human and we're here to stay and our stories and our voices deserve to be heard, I thought, to be honest, when you play characters, it's not about playing a whole tribe, a whole community. You're playing a character within a story. The character may be symbolic, let's be honest, but that's it. But I don't follow or prescribe to this nonsense in literature now or in the media now that one character represents a whole community and therefore certain people have to be seen and certain stories. Everybody on the planet has a story to tell. Some of them might be similar, but there might be differences too. But I have to say, this is pretentious, and it's just a nonsense generalization that we all have. I have to have these stories told. Our voices need to be heard. What about my voice? What about your voice? I mean, it's just a lot of nonsense froth, this.
Well, it is. I mean, when I saw the voices deserve to be heard, that immediately smacks of agenda-driven nonsense. He's pushing a social political agenda and really saying, "Hey, I'm here. My voice is the voice that needs to be heard. You need to be listening to me." So the irony is, although he says he wants other voices to be heard, I don't think he really cares about other voices. He cares about his.
And there's a lot of people in the thread, and it's great to see you at this strange time. For some of you, it might be a brilliant time if it's in America, for example, on your Thanksgiving. Dread Newt here. I ain't gonna lie, this ain't Doctor Who anymore. They killed it and dragged its corpse through this. I do not get it. RTD used to be able to tell really good stories. I agree, especially when Matt Smith was was in Sarah Jane Adventures. Sally, he's not the Doctor. This isn't Doctor Who. It ended back in 2017. We've got Matt the Silent, who's not silent here. The Doctor is known for wearing unique outfits, but the character is not a fashion model. And yes, I want an identifiable silhouette. I think that's very important. And you'll see our review later. We've just stockpiled it for now on the Carnival of Monsters, and of course the frills and that identifiable statuesque John Pertwee silhouette. I wish we had that now. I really do, and I think it's important. My Roku, we've had old and cranky problem solvers, action hero, thinkers, eccentric. Gatwa is just fruity. That's all he's got going for him. And again, I'm not trying to defend him or excuse him, but the scripts are the scripts, aren't there? Maybe he's not being asked to do much. That's the blooming problem. But yeah, I am starting to conclude. Where's the range? Paul Richards, RTD is using the Doctor for human representation. He forgets the Doctor is an alien. And yes, that's my other point that I forgot to say at that time. He says, I'm trying to play every type of human possible. This is an alien, Ncuti. Play alien. And if you think humans have frailties, jealousies, and all these things. You need to do something really strange and play an alien reaction. Look at how Tom Baker would do some very interesting things with his lines, especially in the early seasons, the way he would respond against type. And I think that's what's missing, because when you see somebody play an alien reaction, it's fantastic. It's so engaging. Jim Hillis here. Gatwa'S pushing agenda in the absence of the acting chops and range to play the Doctor. Add to that the showrunner treating the show as a platform for his sermonizing, and we have a toxic cocktail. Sounds like one of my thumbnails recently, doesn't it? So, I will continue. So this is still all about the bigotry and generalizations. I will show you another quick example, everybody, just so you know I have really studied this carefully. Now, in this one, he's led, the question says, I mean, the question's problematic. Listen to this. This is the age of Brexit and MAGA. Was there a racist, homophobic backlash? I mean, I could spend, I think, hours just looking at that statement, because why would the first sentence saying Brexit and MAGA have anything to do with that second sentence? Because please explain. I can't see unless somebody is saying there's a very invisible link going on here. So it's a very naughty question. I think it's a very problematic question. And I actually think a more skilled, politically attuned actor or human being, to be honest, because I'd really be onto them, I'd say, please explain why you've said racist and homophobic in relation to Brexit and MAGA, because I don't see the link myself. And of course, none of us, remember, he's trying to preach to us that we're not all, he's trying not to generalize. He's trying not to actually, do all the things he accuses us of. And of course, what does he do? He falls right into it. So he's asked about this question. I think it's a disgusting question, but then here's his answer. I wouldn't be the only black lead that's taken over a sci-fi franchise that would have received that sort of treatment. Unfortunately, those are voices that exist in sci-fi fandoms. And this is when I can go off in so many different directions. We all know that science fiction is quite pioneering. Look at Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek. And he would have different races in the Enterprise. And how we treat different alien species. And the whole idea in Star Trek was about, you don't go there and conquer, that you actually... What the heck is this nonsense about? And this is when I kind of also said, as one of my summaries, Ncuti, you don't understand science fiction. Sorry, I've been going on for a little while there. Dragon, did you want to come in on this?
Well, that one question really took me aback, because I was appalled to see it lobbed at him. But that tells you also a lot about the person who was doing the interview. And when you look at her resume, that tells you something. But in terms of his response, it goes right back to the victim mentality, because people are trying to somehow earn points by saying, I have been further victimized, but I'm trying to strive against that. And my victimization is akin to the victimization of the UK because of the evil Brexit movers, or the election in America because of the evil voters of Donald Trump. It's not, again, it's not becoming of a professional actor who should be focusing on the craft. And if you're talking about the relevance of these narratives, the stories, because again, Star Trek, for example, did a lot of allegorical storytelling. You do it in a much subtler and more effective and meaningful way, not the ham-fisted approach that we've seen in entertainment the last few years, not least of which has been in Doctor Who with RTD's efforts.
And as Dragon Reese Rhoda says here, also, what does Brexit have to do with MAGA? Do you know what? There might be just a pond between our two countries, but there's, and we share culture in lots of ways, but we are two very identifiably different countries. And so, yes, I don't get it. I don't get the question. I think it's a disgraceful question. And on top of that, I don't know how you can link Brexit with MAGA. This is just shorthand gobbledygook. But Isn't it funny that these are the people who are lecturing us about toxic masculinity, inclusivity, honest representation? And meanwhile, they are misrepresenting events, they're misrepresenting science fiction fandom. Science fiction fandom. What's the science fiction fans? We're the wild ones, are we? Really? I mean, honestly, Dragon, this boggled the brain. This science fiction fans are normally out there. They are normally more tolerant, more respectful, more forward thinking, more aware of the cadences of how humans can interact and be problematic with each other, because it's covered in a lot of sci-fi anyway. I can't believe that an actor in a big science fiction franchise starts to go down this road, that unfortunately those are the voices that exist in sci-fi fandoms.
Well, I consider sci-fi fandom as a whole, and I'm saying across the board, uh, country to country, coast to coast, pole to pole, is one of the most open-minded and egalitarian and receptive populations that you're ever likely to find. And part of the reason is their capacity to see through a lot of the propaganda that's being fed. The problem and the reason they aren't jumping on the bandwagon is they realize it is a bandwagon and they are being fed propaganda. And I don't think that this interviewer gets it. I don't think that Gatwa gets it. I don't think he's even close to understanding what sci fi really is.
No, and to be honest, that's going to segue into my next point. But if everybody can see, I'm not a one-trick pony. There's a lot here in this article that is given away, and I don't think he intended to give it away. I think he was just, as Dragon said, it was a softball interview, and he's played it as quite casually. But what he's saying is giving an awful lot away. And when you see somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, certainly doesn't understand sci-fi, doesn't understand in some ways the facets of their craft, why are we therefore listening to you on other issues? And so I move therefore to my next area, which is his lack of understanding of science fiction. Absolute lack of understanding of it. And just before I move on, good to see you, Matthew Pounder. Sci-fi has always been progressive. Horrible word. I know. But you know what I mean. It's Gene Roddenberry, I think, is one of the best examples on how he wanted to depict humans in the universe, really. Anyway, I was going to show you this lack of understanding of science fiction, something that we all love, and that's why we're all sat here at this time. So, your Doctor Who was a lot of swagger, says the questioner. I mean, is that a blooming question, or is that just a statement? When you've been around for thousands of years, says Ncuti, you pick up a slight pep in your step. If you were getting the chance to be reborn and reborn and reborn and reborn, you'd get excited. And so curiosity and excitement were the two qualities I really wanted to imbue him with. Now, let me just unpack this, everybody, before everybody helps me in the thread, and obviously Divine and Dragon too. So basically, does he understand the Doctor here? If you were getting the chance to be reborn again and again and again, you'd get excited. Let's look at Logopolis. It was funereal. It was sad. When you look at John Pertwee's Doctor, he wasn't getting excited that, do you know what, when he goes into that planet, that radiation cave with the crystal, that he would be born again. He didn't look as though he looked as though he was scared to me. Did Caves of Androzani's Peter Davison look excited that he might regenerate? I'm sorry, but you're just misconstruing this. I get what he's trying to say, but it's quite basic. That, oh, to be born again, how exciting! You're not a baby though. You're if you've been reincarnated in as the Doctor so many times, and I know we're up to 15 now, I actually think you might get tired of it. You might actually get sick of it. Like, here we go again. This is getting tiresome. That's where I could almost fall into that script from The Giggle when RTD had the 14th Doctor sounding as though he was tired. Yeah, I get that. And as you say, Lee Smith, bit like vampires, and you've got Anne Rice and all those stories, and Bram Stoker, that actually immortality is a curse. We had it with Mordrin Undead, didn't we? And of course, so I don't get this nonsense that you're dead excited to regenerate and start again. And of all the qualities he wants to give the 15th Doctor, curiosity. Well, the Doctor gets in a TARDIS and goes to millions of planets. What's new about that? And excitement. Sorry, Dragon, I'm going on.
Not that's okay. I look at it this way: the companions are to have curiosity and excitement. Those are the characters through which you get that emotion. He should be a more patriarchal personality. He's already been around the block many times, and it is something of a curse to go through the regenerative process, to lose a personality and have to start that over again, and to continue to have this compulsion to fight these battles, to right wrongs and to combat evil for the sake of the universe. That's probably not a very pleasurable experience in and of itself. So his take on the character totally misconstrues the history of the character and how such a person, a soul, would change going through those iterations. His response makes no sense to me.
No, and it's again, when you're trying to be pretentious, you try and say you try and sound clever, and what he's saying doesn't make sense to me. When you've been reincarnated so many times, you must be, if anything, I think you'd just be more sick of it. And so that would be an interesting idea. And I have to say, if you just watch all the blooming regenerations, they never look happy. Did the David Tennant Doctor look happy when he had to stop? You know, that famous phrase at the end of him. Did the Matt Smith Doctor look happy at the end when he slowly dropped his bow tie? Do you know, this isn't Doctor Who. I mean, go and watch a few episodes. You don't have to be clever about it, mate. I'm just listing some examples that would have made it easy for you. And so, do you understand science fiction? You've slagged off science fiction fandom, you've slagged off some science fiction fans, and now you basically look as though you don't understand the character you're playing. You are lucky, mate. Absolutely very, very lucky. So, does he understand Doctor Who? And of course, in this one, does he understand science fiction fandom? That top bit, I just want everybody to be aware of. I have to say, when I go to Doctor Who conventions, you see a range of people, and I'll say that euphemistically. And to say that science fiction fandom particularly has these horrible homophobic and racist voices. Dragon, have you been to any conventions and actually seen the range of people there?
I've seen a broad range of very positive fans. I have yet to see someone coming in with a placard saying, "You're black, you're rotten, get out of here." How could Rick Berman have cast Avery Brooks as Captain Sisko in Deep Space Nine? How could we have had Wesley Snipes as Blade if that were an issue? Misogyny, how could we have had Sigourney Weaver or Linda Hamilton playing their key roles in major sci-fi films? I don't see the level of hatred and intolerance in the fans that he seems to so casually cast off as a commonplace occurrence and a regular part of that group of people.
But and look, I appreciate the thread because you're fans too, and just like Dragon, we can come up with examples that just you mentioned Sigourney Weaver, 1979. As Paul Richard says, would Gatwa disagree with Roris Hussein, 1963, or Paul McGann that the Doctor shouldn't be sexual? Do you know what? If you look at examples, Martha Jones, black actor, a black character. There was no issue there. Now, if one or two fans kicked off, that doesn't represent the whole community, so it's not even worth talking about. But I think most people had no issue. My issue with the Martha Jones character was, why give your first proper black companion unrequited love to make her look a bit drippy? It was a bit unfair from the writer. Why have Bill Potts as one of the black companions, but you throw in that she's a lesbian too? It's like tick box bingo. It's like, make her a well fleshed out character. But these are all labels, especially in a program like Doctor Who. We all remember the example, don't we, Dragon? In Chris Chibnall's TARDIS, when you had Graham And then you had that young lad, and I always forget his name.
Oh,
And of course,
Ryan.
yeah,
Ryan.
Ryan. And of course, good strapping black lad. And of course, he was given that one issue, which they then forgot about when he couldn't navigate and coordinate and fell off his bike and stuff. And then they forgot about it again, and they had him sucking his thumb in that awful episode. Don't make somebody a label, make them interesting. And that's been the problem here. So as I'm going through here, the lack of understanding of fandom is one area that I certainly detected. Now, the next big one, if you're sticking with us here, is in this Vanity Fair article, as he's just glibly given answers, he just sounds preoccupied with the superficialities of acting, the froth, as I call it. And have I got examples? Oh boy, do I have examples. Shall we start with the famous one that lots of streams have talked about? I've saved it up to now. I like to think of myself as Madonna. I'm still reinventing myself. Now, he does laugh, which means he's probably joking. So we've got to take the context. But he does say that. I mean, hostage to fortune or what? What did you think when you saw that, Dragon?
Again, it was almost embarrassing, because what you have to do is take it in context of what he's shown his capacity to be in his previous roles up to this point. And he shows no range. So reinventing himself, well, if he could reinvent himself and turn himself into an actor, that would be an improvement, and it would probably help his career. I'm probably being unfair, but that's kind of how it feels.
I like to think of myself as Madonna. I'm still reinventing myself. Again, I could just keep saying pretentious, pretentious, pretentious. If you're an actor, if your job is to play different characters, do you know what? You'll be playing different characters. It's shocking, Gosh, 1 minute you'll play somebody who's in their 40s and maybe somebody who's 29, and 1 minute somebody who's a father, and then another minute somebody who is fatherless. Unbelievable. One day somebody who's ill, and one day somebody who's very healthy, or an athlete. Do you know what? It's called acting. This nonsense. I like to think of myself as Madonna. I'm still reinventing myself. Every actor who takes another job because they don't want to be starving will play a new character. Another Charles Dickens character, a Shakespeare character, or a brand new play. What? So every actor on the planet is like Madonna, or is this just an empty, stupid phrase? But when I'll come back to you, Dragon, the thing I wanted to say is, in jest, and it was in jest, and I'll give him that. But in jest, you can tell a lot of truth. And we know this from our classrooms. We know how kids operate. We know how people operate. And so even though he was joking, and I will keep saying, I acknowledge that, he was telling us that he sees himself as something more than just any other actor. He also is hinting at this aesthetic again, this image again. Instead of saying, I hide as actually a very shy person behind a character, like some actors do, it's all about me shaping. Because Madonna is front and center changing her persona as she does different albums over the decades. So to compare even facetiously tells me so much more psychologically about what he thinks of himself. And he started with imposter syndrome. I don't think he's an imposter at all. What do you think, Dragon?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think one of the dead giveaways is comparing himself to Madonna. Madonna is a diva. So
Yes.
he is a diva. And the pretentiousness of it, and the sense of ego that goes with that. It's all about me. If he had wanted to compare himself to another actor, to Laurence Olivier, okay, that was a person who was very famous for a broad array of performances and transformed himself with each role. That's different. That's a different kind of persona. He decided to hang his hat on Madonna, and that tells me a lot about him, again, that I'm not particularly fond of.
So we move on. So there's the famous Madonna bit. And of course, I think it does just tell us some interesting things. Now, here's another new slide for those of you who've been sticking with us, and I so appreciate it. Thank you very much. But hopefully, we're feeding you some great thoughts here. So, when you take a look at this on our theme, remember, of being preoccupied with the froth of acting, the superficialities, here he's talking about the team he's got, and we waited a long time before accepting anything else. And I know I've used this evidence to make a different point, but here, why aren't you focused on, do you know what, I've never played Macbeth, and so I drove into that role. Last time I played a young 16-year-old, so I was really intrigued by playing this. Actually, to me, it sounds as though he has got a status about himself, and he is holding back because he thinks he can. There's an element of, I'm bigger than just any other actor. I do need to await the next big role rather than, I just need to keep working. I mean, I got the sense sometimes, and I'm being very unfair, that Peter Davison, he was always in work. He was always in work. Sometimes he played us, Tristan in All Creatures Great and Small, some people said was a little bit like the early Fifth Doctor, but he got into it, changed it, adapted it, used his skills, and before you knew it, he's nothing like it. He was in Sink or Swim, the sitcom. He's been on stage, on Gypsy. He's done loads of different stuff. He just seems to keep working and saying yes. I'm sure he's more picky than that, but I get the impression here, this man in his younger age group is saying, I am going to wait because I can wait, because I'd hate to be Darling typecast. Am I being unfair, Dragon?
You are not being unfair. I think that's a very reasonable assessment. I don't know if anyone in the thread would disagree with that, but I think your interpretation is actually spot on.
Try my best. I'm trying my best. I don't like. You love Doctor Who. You want to stick with this, but my God, some of the stuff that comes out, I'm thinking, if this kid was in my classroom and he was writing an essay like this, I would certainly be, I would certainly be logging a few things in my head, wouldn't you, Dragon?
I would be red marking it in a variety of ways. As I say, his essay would be bleeding before it got back to him, and I'd have to give him another shot at giving me a new draft so that he could earn back some points.
All right, well, here we go. The evidence continues. Another slide. Look at this one. This is actually from the first page. And on my kind of, focusing on all the wrong things to do with acting, take a look at this, everybody. Doctor Who's Ncuti Gatwa is on the move. I like to think of myself as Madonna. Now, we've already said that's probably a joke. So after Sex Education and Barbie, he's working with dreamy Benedict Cumberbatch. The things I want to say about that man, I don't think are appropriate. Now, that doesn't sound like when an actor says, do you know what? I was so lucky to learn from some craftsman. Like, I was on the same set as Derek Jacobi. I was on the same set as Judi Dench. I was on the same set as some sterling people. When you hear that sort of thing, you realize they go, oh my gosh, I just watched them. I learned how they prepared their lines. I learned how they did their face and all the rest of it. Instead, since I'm focusing on the superficialities of acting, the things I want to say about that actor, I don't think are appropriate. My hunch there, Dragon, was they're therefore very inappropriate and they're nothing to do with being a professional.
I tend to agree. If there's a single word that I would probably apply, it's lust. And that's, even if that was the sensation that was going through his mind on the set, that's not something that he should be inferring in this interview. That's very inappropriate. And that also tells you something about his personality, because he's very comfortable dropping sexual innuendos in his conversations. That's a part of his persona. But that's, again, why we say he's playing himself. When we talk about his version of the Doctor being hypersexualized, it's because he's playing himself. That's his persona. In real life, that tends to be his mode of conduct. So he's not branching out into any kind of reimagining of his professional career at all. He's playing one role, and it's not one that's appropriate for children's television.
But isn't it fascinating that this sounds almost like it could fall into the script called Rogue? Because he's acting, remember, he's getting paid for it. He's the doctor in Rogue, and he was lusty after another male character. And here he is in real life. There's supposed to be a difference. And he's talking about another bloke and sounding as though he's lusting after him. Right. Okay. That's a human emotion. So park that for 1 second. But the second thing is, as me and Dragon are saying here, it's so unprofessional. Can you imagine saying, I was working with Laurence Olivier and God, he was gorgeous. Or saying, I saw Judi Dench and do you know what? She's a fit woman. This is inappropriate and it's unprofessional and it doesn't sound like a real actor. It just doesn't sound real. You normally talk about, I'm an actor and I respected their acting qualities and I learned from their acting qualities. You don't normally start saying, and I wanted to do this, that, or the other. Or when I saw them acting their socks off. Can you imagine if Judi Dench had just prepared some massive speech from Romeo and Juliet? And as she finished, I just said, God, that was gorgeous. It's undermining, it's objectifying, and it's all the things that you're not supposed to be because these people lecture us about being toxic, masculine, and all the rest of it. Divine and Dragon, I tell you what, my case is almost put to bed here.
Oh, absolutely. And I just have to say, imagine, now you've been a teacher, I'm a teacher. Imagine what would happen if in any kind of an interview we decided to give that remark about one of our coworkers.
Whoa. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Instead of saying, can I watch one of your lessons? Because in teaching, you do sometimes, don't you? Say, can I watch one of your lessons? I just want to see how you do this. Or people might say, can I come and watch how you start a lesson or control that class? And that's about professionalism. But if when you were watching how somebody controls a class or teaches the first chapter of a book you find tricky, and you started going, God, they're gorgeous. Oh, do you know what? I could really lust after. What? You know, and it's almost like, you know, the phrase when people say, just keep it in your trousers. Honestly, this is you. Everything is going in your path here. You've been in Hollywood. You can't believe that you've gone from a starving man, quotes, to 4 or 5 years of great roles, Netflix, Hollywood, one of the top shows in British television, and it's now going global. I mean, what a lucky boy he is. And you can't help but blur this kind of predatory, lusty, you know, personal side of yourself with the roles you've played. And I have to say, it's such a terrible blurring with Rogue. I do find it slightly problematic. And can I say something else, Dragon? Tom Baker was told, don't smoke in front of kids. Don't be seen smoking in public. And he took that seriously. Nowadays, it just sounds as though everything's out the window.
Well, everything is out the window. And again, it shows a lack of respect for the role itself. We're talking about being professional. He's not professional. We're talking about being familiar with the history of the role. He's not familiar with the history of the role. I all I can say is when I read this interview, it made me dislike him more than I already have based on his previous press outings. This is not someone whose work I would really want to enjoy because I can't enjoy it because it's the person. Maybe that's unfair. I don't know.
No, it just shows you that we've got an actor who's right. He's been lucky. I'd keep his mouth shut, and actually, RTD could do him favors by actually controlling that a little bit and minding them a bit more because this shooting from the hip is absolutely crazy. And so, you know, he gives a lot away about his preoccupations and all the rest of it. So I'll move on now to Ncuti lacking irony or self-irony and lack of self-awareness when he opens his mouth. Ncuti shooting his mouth off, as I always say. So here, the example is when he's talking about these full-bodied queer and color characters of color. And you think, oh, for God's sake, are we still doing this? That there's one story to tell. Stop it. Because you see, this is how it works. He's a black actor, and good for you, you've got a job. But as everybody's been saying in the thread, this has been going on for years. Did you see the 90s TV? Did you see some of the roles that black actors played? Everything was fine. So to suddenly say, he's a bit like you know who, Martha Jones's mum from Bridgerton, who seems to be making some interesting pointers nowadays. It's more about me showing off myself. I want to play characters of color and of queer identity, and it's great to see them full-bodied. Full-bodied. Do you know what? I'm trying to think what he thinks has happened before. As a gay person myself, I don't know how many blooming movies I saw when you saw full-bodied Philadelphia. You saw movies where, you know, gay characters were dying of AIDS or had complications coming out. Is that full-bodied? Or would he say that's not? Because honestly, I just don't know where he's come from on this one. He sounds like somebody who doesn't actually understand the context of his craft in so many different ways, doesn't understand science fiction, doesn't understand acting to a degree because of the way he talks, and doesn't understand that, do you know what? Most things have actually been done before. You are not a pioneer. Believe it or not, you're not a pioneer. He makes it sound as though he's right at the cutting edge of stuff, Dragon. I mean, it does sound as though, wow, he's the new explorer in media.
Well, it's funny because, again, I look at the expression full-bodied. Obviously, the implication is fully realized characters. But the funny thing is, when I look at his performances, they feel shallow. They feel skin deep. I don't feel any nuance or depth. I'm certainly not seeing the range. So he's actually taking on airs and assuming a level of accomplishment that he has not yet achieved.
Well, Mad McCann, I mean, I know we're in the northeast in the UK, and after this, we're supposed to be chilling out and going to bed. I hate these statements. How does he know half of the characters in old movies weren't gay? Maybe we didn't need to know, as it didn't matter. Surely that would be more respectful. You know, and as Raymond Williams says, The Naked Civil Servant, 1975, John Hurt telling that one story. Yes, it wasn't the story of every gay man on the planet in the 1970s. It was about one particular Quentin Crisp. I would never, and I hope John Hurt didn't say it at the time, I can't recall him saying it, that I'm representing the gay community and this is the trials and tribulations they face. No, it was about Quentin Crisp. And it was, I just think that humility's gone in this type of interview, in this type of talk. There's no humility in what RTD says anymore. Instead of saying it's a science fiction show geared towards family and children, let's be honest, that's where it was normally pitched, 5:50 on a Saturday night. And know your place, RTD. But instead it's like, I'm going to pioneer this and I'm going to show this and I'm going to use Doctor Who to change this. Get the kids behind the sofa, get back to basics, and stop bigging up the part, And it is all therefore about ego. Dragon?
Nope, that's what it is. There's a certain role that you play when you're taking on the Doctor and you're doing this kind of a show. And get back to that. Get back to what it's supposed to be. The big question is, can Ncuti Gatwa do that? And even if he could, would RTD allow him to? I don't think we're going to see it.
So I was shocked by this article, and I've saved up. I mean, I don't know what other streams do sometimes, because I think they shoot from the Madonna phrase and they shoot at different others and do a 7-minute stream and think that, we're all done. I've taken time to really go, hold on a minute, psychologically, what is this telling me about our male lead actor in Doctor Who? Does it give me confidence in the future? And as somebody, and I'm sorry I've forgotten your name as it was in the thread, I do apologize, was saying, does this mean, because he likes to play every different character and be full-bodied, that the Doctor in season 2 will be any different? So I just found this whole thing I just find it fascinating how people who seem to have a lot of importance in what they say about the human race give away in so many of their utterances that they don't know much about themselves and they don't know much about the human race and they don't know much about their craft. And actually, sometimes quiet, humility, learn quietly in the background. And as you grow your parts and as you get better and better and better, then you might, what you say might have gravitas. But to have, pretend you've got gravitas at the beginning of your career, because it has been an amazing few years for him. My God, talk about bigging your part up. Dragon?
Oh, the word that stood out that you mentioned was humility. If a person is going to be reflective and do some self-examination, it's very hard to do that without expressing humility. And that is the one element in his persona, I think above everything else, that is totally absent. I'm not seeing any humility from him at all.
And what's clever, right? What's clever about playing a Time Lord alien? What does that teach us about the human race? What's clever about playing a Time Lord alien? I mean, yes, I'm given the script by RTD, but as an actor who gets the role and has all these ideas about how the human race should be presented and what we can learn from Doctor Who, I would be questioning the rogue script going, what, do you really want me to play Predatory? Do you really want me to lust after another character while my companion's about to die, as far as I was concerned? Really? I thought he was a hero. I thought he was a moral leader. RTD, do you understand? I don't understand this bit. What's the motivation? Those questions that you normally ask of the writer or the director or something. And then to think, I'm playing this science fiction all action hero, which is what they've turned into. I don't approve of that. But so in Empire of Death, why am I hitting the wall and I don't have a clue what to do? Why do I need to rely on Mel because she's got a moped? Why do I need to land on a planet where they've got a spoon? I'd have so many questions about, God, I thought I was playing one of the most famous roles in British television, but I feel as though I'm playing a prat. Sorry, Dragon.
No, that's exactly the case. He's not playing the doctor. I think the closest we got to what his vision of the doctor would be his performance in Rogue. And that's a sorry state of affairs if you consider what the doctor is supposed to be.
Well, I would have thought there's sometimes there's a moment in your career, early or not, and I have to say in my teaching career, without being diva or ego, I ask questions and sometimes you're not popular. But surely, out of all the scripts I was given, if I was Ncuti Gatwa, I would have issues with just the rogue structuring by going, gosh, he's cavalier, he's irresponsible. It's as if he doesn't care. And then, God, he sounds as though he's just lust mad. I mean, I'm not questioning the gay thing, although I could, as you know, but because the doctor shouldn't be gay and he shouldn't be straight, he shouldn't be aware. But I do have a problem with, were no questions asked? Was he happy to play a character like that? But then when he talks about Benedict Cumberbatch, it sounds as though it's the same character again. So
Well, it is. It is the same character again. And that's why I thought, looking at the interview, looking at his remark about Benedict Cumberbatch, looking at the role he played in Rogue, I'm willing to bet that he looked at that script and said, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to act my socks off for this role." And it's almost embarrassing.
It's a shame. It's a shame. I cannot believe we've got to this position with Doctor Who, with the actor. I in preparation for this, I was looking for interviews early doors. Tom Baker, when he'd been in Sinbad, as we all know, but then he was on the, he was a bricklayer when he was given the role of the Doctor. And God, talk about making you modest and humble. But I couldn't see anything in his interviews that was anything I could correlate with this at all. And you look at Pertwee, you look at Troughton. I went through all the interviews, and I'm sorry, but nobody was talking like this when they got the job. They all felt lucky, but they didn't go all pretentious about it. And so, yes, I find this problematic. The trouble is, he's emulating the showrunner, who is just the same. And as we've said before, you didn't hear Verity Lambert doing messaging. You didn't hear Innes Lloyd doing it, and I could go through them all. Barry Letts was into Buddhism and put that into one or two of his stories, but he was a damn good director. He was a good producer. End of. Final words from you, Dragon, on your thoughts after reading this?
Well, all I can say is it is more of the same. We've seen other interviews. We've seen him articulate some of these viewpoints before. It feels very unprofessional. I don't think he's doing himself any favors. Now, I do think that he is playing to a particular segment of the viewing audience that favors his behavior. But if he's trying to broaden his base and make himself likable, I think he's failed on that score. And he needs to talk to his agent and do a serious reassessment of how he wants to promote himself. Because if he wants to continue in this line of work, what he's doing right now isn't it.
And I as people are saying in the thread and what you've just said, and Styboy73, who is this aiming at? Who are we aiming at? And if it's just a niche, a bit like the Jaguar advert, let's be honest. I mean, I have to go back to, look at that photograph up there. It's the Jaguar advert. And as everybody has said with that Jaguar advert, what is it trying to say about cars? What is it trying to say about the audience they're aiming for and think they're going to get? Does the Jaguar advert sound as though they understand the people who are buying Jaguars? And so I asked the very same question, because the Jaguar effect, as I'm going to start calling it, is what's happened to Doctor Who, that we've been jaguared. We've had the Jaguar effect. We have had Doctor Who made for somebody, but not the ones who normally buy the product, not the ones who buy the merchandise. We're getting Doctor Who kind of carved out and made for a different audience, and I don't even know if it exists. What did they say about the Jaguar advert? Does that audience exist? And now with Doctor Who, I'm starting to see the analogy and go, are we crafting Doctor Who for people who aren't even looking for it? And all those who adore Doctor Who and have always bought the product, it's not being aimed at them. In other words, will they just go away and touch grass? Dragon?
Well, I've already killed the yard in front of my house. I've been running around on that grass, avoiding Gatwa'S Who for months now, and that's where we're at. The Jaguar comparison, I think, is very appropriate, and yes, they have destroyed the brand. Whoever promoted Jaguar this round, they destroyed that brand, and right now RTD is in the process of destroying the Doctor Who brand.
And Joe Chapman, lovely to hear from you. Brendan, have to thank you for all your insight and passion. And Dragon, it's a home for us, all of us who truly love Who. I'll always be honest. I never intend to be rude. I'll always aim in on evidence. But I am seeing what I would call the Jaguar effect on Doctor Who. And it can't be a good place. Dragon, my friend, I'll speak to you in a minute. But thank you for being with us on this ride tonight.
My pleasure.
And thank you, everybody else. And those in America, happy Thanksgiving. And thanks for giving us an hour of your time. Good night, everyone.
Good night.